The Terran Resilience wasn't much to look at. Its hull was pockmarked with rust patches and emergency welding seams, a patchwork testament to countless repairs across decades of service. As Commander Corva Nixel guided the ancient vessel into the gleaming Galactic Alliance docking bay, she could already hear the snickers from the other ship captains over the comms. "Is that an actual rust patch?" "I thought those were extinct," came the silky voice of Admiral Vrex of the Luminary Fleet, his tone dripping with mockery. Corva gritted her teeth. "The Resilience has survived 3 wars and a black hole collapse. Show some respect." Respect? For that flying scrap heap? How quaint, Vrex chuckled. Humanity truly is the most sentimental species in the Alliance. The docking clamps engaged with a wheeze, and Corva tried to ignore the stares from the pristine Luminari officers as she and her crew disembarked. The meeting was already starting poorly. They had been summoned to join the Alliance's defense against the approaching Voidborn Armada, a mysterious species of energy-based entities that had already consumed 3 star systems. "Commander Nixel," greeted Grand Marshal Ozira, the blue-skinned Cerulin who headed the Alliance Military Council. "We've allocated your crew to evacuation duty. Your ship is compromised for frontline engagement." "Evacuation? Lieutenant?" Dax Rever, Corva's tactical officer, stepped forward. "The Resilience is a destroyer, not a passenger vessel." "A destroyer?" Another admiral, this one from the Crystalline Prism Collective, didn't bother hiding his laughter. "That antique wouldn't last 30 seconds against a Voidborn scout, let alone their primary fleet." Corva drew herself up to her full height, nearly 7 feet of scarred muscle and determination. "My ship has an experimental weapons system that could turn the tide." "Yes, your rust cannons," Vrex rolled his compound eyes. "We've heard the rumors. Releasing iron oxide particulates as a primitive smokescreen? How innovative." The council chamber erupted in laughter, but Corva knew what they didn't. The rust that coated the Resilience wasn't just oxidized metal. It was a hyper-adaptive nanomaterial, developed by Dr. Ezric Morrow, her ship's chief scientist, a brilliant but eccentric genius who had been studying the Voidborn for decades before anyone else recognized the threat. "The Voidborn arrived at Azura Station 6 hours ago," Ozira announced, silencing the room. "They've already destroyed half the defensive fleet. We launch in 1 hour. Commander Nixel, your orders stand. Evacuation duty, far from the front lines." As the council dispersed, Corva and her crew huddled in a corner of the gleaming station. "They don't know what they're facing," muttered Dr. Morrow, his mismatched eyes, one blue, one cybernetic red, scanning data on his wrist computer. "The Voidborn aren't just energy beings. They're quantum predators. They feed on coherent energy patterns. Those fancy Alliance ships are practically gourmet meals," added Chief Engineer Lix Vantari, her fingers absently tracing the tattoos that covered her arms, tattoos that, unknown to most, were actually circuitry schematics. Corva made her decision. "Prep the rust protocol. We're not running evacuation." "Disobeying direct orders?" Dax raised an eyebrow. Corva's smile was razor-sharp. "Of course not. We'll evacuate, right after we save their shiny, arrogant asses." As they returned to their useless rust ship, none of them noticed the shadows shifting unnaturally behind them, or the faint whisper of static that followed in their wake. The Voidborn had already infiltrated the station. The Terran Resilience hung back as the gleaming Alliance Armada formed a battle line against the approaching Voidborn. From her vantage point, Corva could see the enemy clearly for the first time. They weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were distortions in space itself, rippling darkness studded with points of impossible light, like negative space constellations. "They're beautiful," whispered Ensign Pax Aurelis, the youngest member of Corva's bridge crew. Her hands hovered over the sensor station, trembling slightly. "Don't let their aesthetics fool you," Dr. Morrow cautioned, not looking up from his station, where he was making final adjustments to the Rust protocol. Their beauty is like that of a predator, designed to mesmerize prey. Alliance fleet is engaging, reported Lieutenant Rever. Multiple targeting solutions. They're firing. The view screen blazed as the Alliance vessels unleashed their advanced weaponry, quantum torpedoes, phase disruptors, singularity lances. The attacks struck the void-born entities, creating spectacular flares of energy. Then the impossible happened. The void-born grew in response, absorbing the energy and expanding. As I predicted, Dr. Morrow said grimly. Conventional energy weapons. Only feed them, the comm system crackled. This is Grand Marshal Ozira to all vessels. Fall back. Repeat. Fall bay. Static replaced the transmission. On screen, the lead void-born entity engulfed a luminary cruiser. The ship's hull seemed to dissolve, its very molecular structure unraveling as the crew's screams echoed over the open channel before abruptly cutting off. Marshal Ozira's ship has been destroyed, Dax reported, his voice unnaturally calm. Alliance. Forces are in disarray. Corva made her decision. Take us in. Commander, Chief Engineer Vantari looked up from her station. The Rust protocol isn't fully charged. We don't need full charge. We need to buy time. Corva tapped her command console. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. The ancient engines of the Resilience growled to life, propelling the vessel toward the heart of the battle. Alliance ships scattered, some damaged, others retreating in panic. Incoming transmission from Admiral Vrex, said Communications Officer Iria Zenith. Vrex's face appeared on screen, his usual composure shattered. Nixel! What are you doing? Get that rust bucket out of here! We're going to engage the Voidborn, Corva replied calmly. With what? That ancient junk heap will be consumed in seconds. Perhaps. But before that happens, we might learn something. Useful. Corva cut the transmission. Iria, broadcast this on all frequencies. All Alliance ships maintain minimum safe distance from void-born entities. Observe our approach and take notes. As the Resilience moved closer to the nearest void-born entity, something strange happened. The entity seemed to hesitate, its expansion slowing as it sensed the approaching vessel. It's confused, Dr. Morrow said, excitement creeping into his voice. It can't get a clear reading on us. The rust, Corva realized. It's disrupting their perception somehow. Not just disrupting, Dr. Morrow corrected. The nanomaterial is refracting their quantum sensory apparatus. We're essentially invisible to them, or at least unclear. The void-born entity sent out a tendril of darkness toward the Resilience, cautiously probing the vessel. Where it touched the hull, the rust seemed to shimmer and shift, creating a feedback loop that caused the tendril to recoil. Deploy the rust countermeasures, Corva ordered. Minimal dispersal. Let's see how they react. Chief Engineer Vantari nodded, activating a series of controls. External panels on the Resilience opened, releasing clouds of what appeared to be rusty dust into space. The reaction was immediate and violent. The void-born entity convulsed as the particles made contact, its form destabilizing like oil on water. It's working, Pax exclaimed, but Corva's eyes narrowed. Too well. They're adapting. Before she could finish, the entity surged forward, enveloping the Resilience completely. For a moment, the bridge was plunged into darkness. Emergency lights flickered on, casting an eerie red glow over the crew. Hull integrity at 87% and holding, reported Vantari. Dr. Morrow laughed. A single, sharp bark of triumph. We've got it. We're inside its perceptual blind spot. And now, Corva said, a fierce smile spreading across her face, we find out what makes these bastards tick. Inside the void-born entity, reality itself seemed distorted. The view screens showed impossible geometries, space folding in on itself, light bending in ways that hurt the eyes. The crew of the Resilience felt it too. a pressure on their minds like standing too close to an electric fence. Fascinating, Dr. Morrow muttered, his cybernetic eye whirring as it adjusted to the strange environment. We're experiencing quantum superposition on a macro scale. The Voidborn exists in multiple states simultaneously. Save the science lecture for later, Ezric, Corva said, gripping her command chair as the ship shuddered. What's our status? Hull integrity holding at 83%, Chief Engineer Vantari reported. The nanomaterial is adapting to the Voidborn's attempts to breach it, but I don't know how long it can keep up. Dax Rever's hands flew over the tactical console. I'm detecting something. Energy patterns within the entity. It might be vulnerable to targeted disruption. Can we communicate with it? Asked Communications Officer Zenith. I don't think it's interested in talking, Corva replied grimly. Pax, what are the sensors telling you? Ensign Aurelius frowned at her readings. Sir, I'm detecting other ships inside this thing, or what's left of them. The Voidborn doesn't just destroy vessels, it absorbs them, breaks them down to their component parts. And it can't do that to us because of the rust. Protocol, Dr. Morrow said, excitement building in his voice. Commander, I have an idea. The nanomaterial can do more than just protect us. It can be weaponized. How? Corva demanded. The Voidborn entities maintain coherence through quantum entanglement. If we modify our rust particles to disrupt that entanglement, we might be able to destabilize it from within. Corva didn't hesitate. Do it! As Dr. Morrow and Chief Vantari worked to modify the rust protocol, the resilience pushed deeper into the heart of the entity. The pressure increased, both physical and mental. Several crew members reported hallucinations, voices whispering in unknown languages, glimpses of impossible landscapes. I think they're trying to communicate, Ensign Aurelius said suddenly, her eyes wide, not with words, but with concepts, impressions. What are they saying? Corva asked. They're hungry. So hungry. They've been traveling between galaxies, consuming everything in their path. Pax's voice took on a distant quality. They don't understand why we resist. To them, we're just food. Well, this meal is about to give them indigestion, Dax muttered. Dr. Morrow looked up from his work. It's ready. We've modified the nanomaterial to target the quantum bonds holding the entity together. But there's a catch. We'll need to be at the exact center of the entity for maximum effect. And how do we find that? Corva asked. Follow. The pressure, Pax said, still in that strange, distant voice. The center is where it's most intense. Corva nodded to her pilot. You heard her. Take us in. The resilience plunged deeper, its ancient hull groaning under the strain. Warning lights flashed across every console. The mental pressure became almost unbearable, crew members clutching their heads, some bleeding from their noses. Hull integrity at 65%, Vantari reported through gritted teeth. We're not going to get another shot at this. Almost there, Pax whispered, her eyes unfocused. The heart of the void. Then suddenly the pressure vanished. The view screens showed a perfect sphere of absolute darkness, a singularity-like core that somehow remained perfectly stable. That's it, Dr. Morrow said in awe. The quantum nucleus. Deploy the modified rust protocol. Now! Chief Vantari slammed her hand down on the activation control. The resilience shuddered as it released a concentrated burst of nanomaterial directly into the core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the darkness began to unravel. Strands of void peeled away like thread from a cosmic tapestry. It's working, Dr. Morrow exulted. The entity is losing cohesion. Get us out of here, Corva ordered. Maximum thrust. The resilience turned, its engines straining as it raced away from the collapsing core. Behind them, the void-born entity began to implode, folding in on itself like a dying star. As they burst free of the entity's dissolving form, the view screen showed the astonished faces of Alliance officers watching from their ships. "One down," Corva said grimly. "Now let's teach the Alliance how to fight back." Word spread quickly through the Alliance fleet about the Resilience's impossible victory. Ships that had been retreating now held position, watching as the rusty human vessel emerged from the dissipating remains of the void-born entity. "Incoming transmission from Grand Marshal Ozira," Communications Officer Zenith announced. "She's alive?" The Grand Marshal's face appeared on screen, her blue skin ashen with strain. "Commander Nixel, my flagship was pulled into a pocket dimension created by the Voidborn before it could be fully consumed. Your actions somehow disrupted that dimension, freeing us." She paused. "How did you destroy it?" Before Corva could respond, multiple alarms blared across the bridge. "The remaining Voidborn entities are converging on our position," Dax reported. "They've identified us as a threat." "They can communicate with each other," Dr. Morrow realized. "Share information." "Which means they can adapt," Corva said grimly. "Ozira, we don't have time to explain everything. The short version, our rust, is actually a hyper-adaptive nanomaterial that disrupts the Voidborn's quantum structure. We need to distribute it to as many ships as possible." The Grand Marshal's expression hardened. "What do you need from us?" "Time and proximity. We need to get close enough to transfer the nanomaterial to other vessels. And we need to hold off the Voidborn until those transfers are complete. You'll have it. Ozira out." The Alliance fleet reformed around the Resilience, creating a protective perimeter. Corva could see the doubt in many of the captains' faces. Their pristine ships now taking orders to protect a rusted human vessel they had mocked hours earlier. "Begin preparations for nanomaterial transfer," Corva ordered. "Chief Vantari, how many ships can we equip?" The engineer's fingers flew over calculations. "With our current reserves, maybe 20. Not enough for the entire fleet." "Focus on the most powerful ships from each species," Corva decided. "They can act as nodes to distribute smaller amounts to their respective fleets." As the first Alliance ships docked with the Resilience to receive their share of the nanomaterial, the Voidborn attacked en masse. Their tactics had changed. Instead of engulfing ships one by one, they sent concentrated tendrils of void energy to pierce Alliance vessels from a distance. "They're adapting," Dr. Morrow warned, "learning from their fallen comrade." A Cerulean cruiser exploded as a void tendril punctured its reactor core. Another tendril lashed out toward the Resilience, only to be intercepted by a Luminari vessel that sacrificed itself in the process. "That was Admiral Vrex's ship," Dax said, quietly. Corva nodded grimly. "He died with honor." The bridge fell silent for a moment, then returned to the urgent task at hand. One by one, Alliance vessels received their share of the nanomaterial, their hulls beginning to show patches of rusty coloration as the substance spread across their surfaces. "Transfer at 60%, Chief Vantari reported. "But we're running out of raw materials." "Divert non-essential systems," Corva ordered. "Life support, artificial gravity, anything we can spare." Dr. Morrow looked up from his station. "Commander, I've been analyzing the Voidborn's attack patterns. They're not just adapting, they're evolving, becoming more complex with each engagement. The nanomaterial may not work as effectively the second time." "Then we need something more," Corva said. "Something they won't expect." Ensign Aurelius spoke up hesitantly. "Sir, when I was connected to their consciousness, I sensed something. They're not just hungry. They're afraid." "Afraid? Of what?" "Of dying. Of ending. They consume energy because they're trying to stave off their own entropy." Dr. Morrow's eyes widened. "Of course. They're ancient beings, possibly from the early universe. They feed on energy to maintain their quantum coherence against the universal tendency toward disorder." "How does that help us?" Corva asked. Instead of fighting their hunger, we could offer them an alternative food source, Dr. Morrow explained. A sustainable one that won't destroy other life forms. Like what? Stars nearing the end of their natural life. Black holes. Cosmic phenomena that release enormous energy but aren't sentient. Communications Officer Zenith turned from her station. Commander, I've been monitoring communications between the void-born entities. They're using quantum signals that our systems can now detect thanks to the nanomaterial. If we could translate these signals, we could negotiate. Corva finished the thought. But would they listen? They might, Pax said. If we show them we understand what they are, that we can help them survive without consuming sentient life. As the final Alliance ships received their nanomaterial transfers, the Voidborn pressed their attack. The Resilience shuddered under a direct hit, systems failing across the vessel. Hull integrity at 42%, Chief Vantari reported. One more hit, like that, and we're finished. Corva made her decision. Prepare a comprehensive data package on dying stars and other potential energy sources. Include translation algorithms based on the quantum signals we've detected. We're going to attempt communication. And if they don't listen? Dax asked. Corva's expression hardened. Then we take as many of them with us as we can. The Resilience trembled as another void-born attack dissipated against its nanomaterial hull. Across the battlefield, Alliance ships were now fighting back effectively, their newly acquired rust armor allowing them to survive encounters that would have destroyed them hours earlier. Message package ready, Communications Officer Zenith announced. But I'm not sure how to transmit it in a way they'll understand. I'll do it, Pax said quietly. The young ensign had been unnaturally still since her brief connection to the void-born consciousness. I can feel them, their curiosity, their hunger. I can channel the message through the same pathways they used to reach into my mind. Dr. Morrow looked concerned. That's extremely dangerous, Ensign. The connection could overwhelm your neural patterns. It's our best chance, Pax insisted. And maybe our only one. Corva studied her youngest crew member. Are you sure about this? Pax nodded. I am, Commander. Set up the neural interface, Corva ordered. But at the first sign of danger, we pull her out, understood? As Dr. Morrow and Chief Vantari prepared the makeshift neural transmitter, Corva received updates from the Alliance fleet. Several void-born entities had been destroyed or severely damaged, but at a terrible cost. Over 30% of the Alliance, vessels were gone, their crews consumed by the darkness. Neural interface ready, Dr. Morrow reported. Pax sat in the center of the bridge, electrodes attached to her temples. She closed her eyes as the system powered up, her breathing becoming slow and regular. Transmission beginning, Zenith said. Quantum signal detected. They're receiving it. For several tense minutes, nothing seemed to happen. The battle continued around them, explosions flashing across the view screen as ships and Void-born clashed. Then suddenly, the attack stopped. The Void-born entities froze in place, their tendrils of darkness retracting. They're listening, Pax whispered, her eyes still closed. On the view screen, the largest Void-born entity began to change shape, forming a rough approximation of a humanoid figure. It was as if the Void itself had decided to mimic life. Incredible, Dr. Morrow breathed. They're attempting to communicate on our terms. The Void figure gestured, and a strange, discordant voice filled the bridge, not through the comm systems, but seemingly directly into their minds. Hunger! Endless! Help! Pax responded, her voice overlaid with harmonic overtones that made the air shimmer. Yes, help. Food without death. Energy without destruction. Show. Images appeared on the view screen, not transmitted by the ship's systems, but somehow projected directly from Pax's mind. Dying stars, pulsars, black holes, cosmic strings, all sources of enormous energy that existed without sentience. Enough? Yes, Pax affirmed. Enough to sustain. We can guide you, show you where to find these sources. There was a long pause, the void figure seeming to ponder this offer. Then, why help after harm? Corva stepped forward. Because that's who we are. We fight when we must, but we prefer to understand, to find solutions that benefit all. Another long pause. Deal. Show food. No more consume life. Relief flooded through the bridge crew. Pax began to sag in her chair, the neural interface taking its toll. We need to disconnect her, Dr. Morrow urged. Her neural patterns are becoming unstable. As they moved to remove the electrodes, the void figure suddenly convulsed. A ripple of darkness spread through the void-born entities. Betrayal! The mental voice was now a shriek of rage and pain. Attack! Deception! What's happening? Corva demanded. Dax checked his tactical readouts. Multiple quantum torpedo detonations detected. Admiral Vrex's second-in-command has launched an attack on the Voidborn. Corva slammed her fist on the comm control. Cease fire immediately. We've established communication. Too late, Zenith said grimly. The Voidborn are responding. The Void entities surged forward with renewed fury, their attacks now more precise and devastating. They had learned from their encounters, adapting to penetrate even nanomaterial-reinforced hulls. Get Pax out of that interface, Corva ordered as the ship rocked from a near miss. But Ensign Aurelius was rigid in her chair, eyes wide open but unseeing. They're coming, she whispered. All of them. The entire Voidborn collective, thousands of entities. They think we lured them into a trap. Dr. Morrow forcibly disconnected the neural interface, catching Pax as she slumped forward. She needs medical attention. The mental contact was too intensive. Take her to sickbay, Corva ordered. And prepare for... The ship lurched violently, throwing crew members against bulkheads. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Direct hit. Hull breach on decks 3 through 5. Vantari shouted over the blaring alarms. Emergency force fields. Holding. But we're losing structural integrity. Corva knew there was only one option left. All hands. Abandon ship. Transmit all data on the nanomaterial to the Alliance fleet. Commander, Dax protested, we can still fight. That's an order. Lieutenant, the Resilience has one last mission. Corva's voice was steady despite the chaos around her. I'll handle it alone. As her crew reluctantly headed for the escape pods, Corva set the final coordinates. The Resilience would make a suicidal run into the heart of the largest void-born entity, its remaining nanomaterial set to release in a catastrophic burst that might buy the Alliance time to regroup. You served us well, old girl, Corva whispered to her ship as the bridge emptied. One last dance. The evacuation klaxons wailed as the crew of the Resilience raced to the escape pods. Dr. Morrow carried the unconscious form of Ensign Aurelius, her neural patterns still erratic from the intense connection with the Voidborn. Everyone clear the bridge, Corva ordered, her fingers flying over the navigation controls. That's an order. But as the last of her officers filed out, she realized someone had remained behind. Lieutenant Dax Rever stood at the tactical station, calmly plotting, firing solutions. I said clear the bridge, Lieutenant, Corva repeated. With all due respect, Commander, you need a tactical officer for this run. Dax didn't look up from his station. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't have all the fun. Before Corva could argue further, Dr. Morrow reappeared in the doorway. The escape pods are away, he reported, but I'm staying too. Damn it, Ezra. The nanomaterial deployment requires precise calibration, he interrupted. You need me here. Corva glared at her insubordinate officers, then nodded curtly. Fine, but if either of you gets a chance to escape, you take it. Clear? The Resilience accelerated toward the massive void-born entity that had been communicating with them, now transformed back into a churning vortex of darkness. Around them, the battle raged anew, Alliance ships fighting with determination despite the overwhelming odds. 3 minutes to intercept, Dax reported. Dr. Morrow worked feverishly at his station. I'm modifying the nanomaterial for maximum dispersion. If we can reach their quantum nucleus again. Incoming transmission from Grand Marshal Ozira, Corva said. On screen. The Cerulean commander's face appeared, her expression grim but respectful. Commander Nixel, the Alliance fleet is moving to cover your approach. Your data transmission has been received. Whatever you're planning, make it count. We will, Marshal. Corva's voice was steady. And when this is over, tell them. Tell them the rust bucket saved the day. Ozira nodded solemnly. It will be remembered. As the transmission ended, the ship shuddered under another assault. Warning indicators flashed across every console. Hull integrity at 31%, Dr. Morrow reported. Nanomaterial reserves at 47% and primed for detonation. 2 minutes to intercept, Dax added. Alliance ships are engaging the smaller entities, clearing our path. Corva gripped her command chair as the Resilience plunged toward the massive void-born entity. On the view screen, she could see Alliance vessels, once sleek and pristine, now bearing the rusty patches of nanomaterial, fighting with newfound effectiveness. Suddenly, an alarm sounded from the medical bay. Commander, Dr. Morrow exclaimed, checking his readouts. Ensign Aurelis is showing increased neural activity. She's somehow still connected to the Voidborn Collective. Can she hear us? Corva asked. I don't know, but her brain waves are synchronizing with the Voidborn's quantum signals. A new voice came over the comm system. Pax's voice, but overlaid with the same harmonic overtones they had heard during the communication attempt. Commander, I can see them. All of them. Their history, their journey. They're so old. They've been traveling between galaxies for billions of years. Ensign, we're about to engage the primary entity, Corva responded. Is there anything you can tell us that might help? They're not just a collective. They're a family. And they're frightened. They don't understand why we would offer peace and then attack. Pax's voice was strained. I'm trying to show them the truth, that it was a misunderstanding. 1 minute. To intercept, Dax warned. Pax, Corva said urgently. Can you communicate our intentions? Tell them we're not their enemy? I'm trying, but they're so angry, so hurt. Pax's voice wavered. Wait, something's changing. They're listening. On the view screen, the massive void-born entity suddenly began to shift, its churning darkness stabilizing into a more defined shape. The attacks against Alliance ships slowed, then ceased altogether. They're responding to her, Dr. Morrow said wonderingly. She's somehow re-established the connection. 30 seconds to intercept, Dax reported. Should I adjust course? Corva hesitated, torn between the mission and this unexpected development. Hold position, she finally ordered. But keep the nanomaterial primed just in case. The Resilience slowed its approach, hovering at the edge of the void-born entity's reach. For long moments, nothing happened. Then the entity began to contract, its vast darkness condensing into a smaller, more concentrated form. They're reconfiguring, Dr. Morrow said, studying his readouts. Changing their quantum structure. Pax's voice came again, stronger now. They understand. They're willing to negotiate again, but they need proof of our intentions. What kind of proof? Corva asked. They want to merge with our nanomaterial, not to consume it, but to understand it, to adapt it for their needs. Dr. Morrow looked up from his station, his mismatched eyes wide. If they could integrate the nanomaterial into their quantum structure, they might be able to feed on ambient cosmic energy instead of consuming life forms. Is that possible? Corva demanded. Theoretically, yes. The nanomaterial was designed to interact with quantum fields. With some modifications, do it, Corva ordered. Prepare a sample for transfer. As Dr. Morrow worked, the comm system crackled with urgent messages from the Alliance fleet, demanding to know what was happening. Corva ignored them, focusing entirely on the delicate operation unfolding before her. Sample ready, Dr. Morrow announced. But we'll need to get closer. For the transfer, take us in, Corva ordered. Slowly. The Resilience edged forward, its battered hull gleaming with the last of its nanomaterial coating. The void-born entity extended a tendril toward them, not attacking, but reaching. Deploying sample, Dr. Morrow said. Activating the release mechanism, cloud of rusty particles drifted from the ship toward the waiting darkness. As they made contact, a flash of energy rippled through the entity, followed by a cascade of light that spread outward like a wave. It's working, Dr. Morrow breathed. They're integrating the nanomaterial into their quantum matrix. Across the battlefield, the other void-born entities began to change as well, their aggressive posture relaxing as they received the data from their leader. Pax's voice came one last time, weaker now, but filled with wonder. They're grateful. They've been searching for so long, surviving any way they could. Now they have a choice. The massive entity before them pulsed once, then began to dissolve. Not in destruction, but in transformation. Its darkness lifted, revealing a shimmering, translucent form that radiated soft light. They're evolving, Dr. Morrow said in awe. The nanomaterial is helping them stabilize their quantum structure without consuming living energy. As the last of the void-born entities transformed, a wave of relief swept through the Alliance fleet. Ships that had been preparing for a last stand now hung in space, witnesses to a miracle born of desperation and understanding. Grand Marshal Ozira's voice came over the comm. Commander Nixel, what have you done? Corva looked at the shimmering entities that had once been their deadliest enemy. We found a third option, Marshal. Neither destruction nor surrender. The Resilience drifted, systems failing, but its mission complete. As Alliance vessels approached to offer assistance, Corva felt a sense of vindication that transcended her exhaustion. Commander, Dax said quietly, you've done the impossible. We did it together, Corva corrected him. The ship everyone mocked just saved the galaxy. In the medical bay, Ensign Aurelis finally regained consciousness, her connection to the Voidborn fading as they completed their transformation. They want to help us, she murmured to Dr. Morrow. Share what they've learned across billions of years. As the Resilience was taken in tow by an Alliance cruiser, news of their achievement spread throughout the fleet. The rust-covered ship, once an object of derision, was now being hailed as the savior of the Alliance. Grand Marshal Ozira herself came aboard to meet with Corva and her crew. The Cerulean leader stood in the battle-damaged bridge, her usual aloofness replaced by genuine respect. The Alliance owes you a debt we can never repay, she said formally. Your unconventional methods have accomplished what our advanced technology could not. Sometimes the old ways have value, Corva replied. And sometimes what looks like weakness is actually strength in disguise. As Alliance engineers swarmed over the Resilience, studying its nanomaterial and integrating its technology into their designs, Corva knew that the galaxy would never be the same. The Voidborn, now transformed into beings of light rather than darkness, had already begun sharing their ancient knowledge with Alliance scientists, and at the center of it all was a rusty old ship that nobody had believed in, except for the crew who called it home. 3 months later, Commander Nixel stood in the observation deck of the newly recommissioned Terran Resilience. The ship had been rebuilt, its systems upgraded with technology derived from both Alliance science and Voidborn knowledge. But Corva had insisted on one thing. Patches of the original nanomaterial rust remained on the hull, a proud testament to their history. Admiring the view? Dr. Morrow asked, joining her at the viewport. His cybernetic eye gleamed as it tracked the activity outside. Alliance and former Voidborn entities working together to construct a massive energy collection array that would harness the power of a dying star. Admiring how far we've come, Corva replied. From evacuation duty to leading the joint scientific mission, Lieutenant Rever appeared on her other side. The Luminari delegation has arrived. Admiral Vrex's replacement is considerably more respectful of our rust bucket than his predecessor was. I imagine so, Corva said dryly, though I sometimes miss the challenge of proving them wrong. Chief Engineer Vantari called from across the deck. Commander, the new quantum drive is online. The former Voidborn have integrated their spatial folding technology with our propulsion systems. We can now travel between galaxies if we want to. Corva nodded, satisfaction warming her chest. And Communications Officer Zenith? Working with the translator team, Dax reported. They've already decoded 3 more ancient Voidborn data caches. The scientific discoveries alone will advance our technology by centuries. The door to the observation deck slid open, and Ensign Aurelius entered. Though she had physically recovered from her neural connection with the Voidborn, something fundamental had changed in the young officer. She now served as the primary liaison between humanity and the transformed entities, her unique mental connection making her invaluable to diplomatic relations. "They have a message for you, Commander," Pax said, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "They've decided on a name for themselves. No longer Voidborn, they wish to be called the Enlightened. And they've asked permission to add a small amount of their luminescence to our hull, a gesture of partnership." Corva smiled. "Tell them we would be honored." As the crew dispersed, to their duties, Corva remained at the viewport, watching as points of light, once creatures of darkness and hunger, danced around her ship. The Resilience now bore both rust and radiance on its hull, symbols of survival, adaptation, and unexpected friendship. Out in the vast darkness of space, other ships were beginning to adopt the distinctive reddish-brown patches on their own hulls, not out of necessity, but out of respect. What had once been mocked as obsolete was now recognized as the vanguard of a new era. Not bad for a rust bucket, Corva murmured to herself, as the stars stretched before her, promising new adventures. For the ship that had changed the course of galactic history,